This week on Full Circle Florida, let the lawmaking begin. The gavel drops in Tallahassee. 1,800 bills and counting on the table, but how much of those are about helping you? And how much is more layers of politics? Forrest Saunders is here taking inventory from the Capitol. What is Trump doing? Unemployment claims are up. The stock market is down. The trade war is on, then off, then on again. What's behind the White House whiplash? Is this the art of the deal still in the making, or is it ruled by chaos? We discuss, you debate. And we're talking baseball, the Rays and the future. Is Sternberg looking to sell? New reporting on a possible deal in the works, and the Tampa group making a play to buy the team and build a stadium in Tampa. Is it for real, or is it just more rumors and a long saga? A familiar sports reporter is here with what he knows and what's still behind closed doors. Welcome in, everyone, here to Full Circle Florida. Capitol reporter Forrest Saunders joining me off the top today. And Forrest, 1,800 bills, give or take, on the table in Tallahassee to start the session. How much of these are focusing on the cost of living issues that continue to squeeze so many people in Florida?
Like all of them, man. I mean, there are so many. It's not all 1,800, but it is certainly a sizable amount, because when we went back to the election, right, there were sort of two mandates, at least that's what Republicans say here in Florida. One of them was immigration. Well, they kind of tackled that. And so now the other one, maybe the big one, according to polling, it is the big one, affordability. So there are so many different options, too. This is a smorgasbord of ideas in order to try and help Floridians with their high cost of living. Right. Democrats, I will say, they want to go a lot further than some of these Republican bills. They want to do things like rent caps and some of the other gold standard bills that they propose every year. But the stuff that might actually move, given the GOP supermajorities, let's talk a little bit about that. There are some small things, right? That includes some more work on condo reform. We don't really know how much is going to be done, but there is still some interest out there. And we don't really know what that's going to look like. They want to bring down some of those high fees that condo owners are paying right now because of those new building safety bills. And then there's property insurance reform. That's always in the mix. We don't know what that would look like exactly yet, because there is still an investigation ongoing of insurers in Florida, and there might be legislation that comes out of that. But the big one, the big elephant in the room, is probably property taxes.
Right.
And there is a push by some to maybe eliminate property taxes almost entirely, or at least for some people. But then again, there is a gradient of ideas. Yeah. There's a study that would just look at property tax elimination. Then there's, expanding the homestead exemption, and then looking at assessments and how to tamp those down if you paid a lot, maybe freezing your assessment rate so you wouldn't have a huge increase if you added onto your home or made it harder against storms. Yeah. And a lot of those would have to go in the ballot, so it's not something that would be immediately done. It's something that voters would have to pass in 26. So don't look for any big changes, even if some of these crazy bills like getting rid of property taxes were to go through.
That would be big. All right, I got about 20 seconds left. What do we know about this insurance investigation reporting that insurance companies were crying poverty while hiding profits?
Yeah, so there's going to be an investigation by a House subcommittee, Insurance and Banking. We spoke with the chair of that committee. He said that he wants to get to work immediately. What he stressed was he was going to dig in, he was going to find the truth and follow it wherever it leads. They don't have some preconceived notion of where they're going to go with this investigation. Yeah. They just want to see what comes out of it. He's going to talk to all the stakeholders, try and figure out what's what, and whether or not insurance companies were crying poverty while making profits.
All right, Forrest, thank you as always. Appreciate it. Forrest Saunders in Tallahassee. All right, let's bring in our political analyst, Dr. Susan MacManus, back with us here this week. Okay, if this turns out to be true with this insurance investigation, that these companies were crying poverty and raising everyone's rates while they were hiding profits, how big of a political storm would that be, and who gets the blame for it?
It would be a very big political storm, but one that wouldn't be surprising to a lot of people, because we do know that for most people, insurance is a bad word, and it's likely that the bigger accusation would be against the insurance companies more than the politician.
And maybe a call for reform, whether state lawmakers respond to that. That's a real-time situation in Tallahassee. Meanwhile, the ripple effect of President Trump's early moves in the Oval Office. It's been 50 days in, quite the ride so far. The stock market very volatile, unemployment claims are up. And there's this, cloud of uncertainty hanging over the economy with this on-again, off-again trade war with the tariffs. If you're advising the president right now, what are you telling him at this point?
Obviously, it's difficult to keep going full speed ahead. But you can go full speed, but then obviously slow down a bit till you figure out what the blockades are and then speed up again. But the public does want something done. Interesting though, when they look at the waste and inefficiency, because that's the driving point of a lot of this, it's very interesting because Democrats think that the waste is a consequence of poor decisions on spending, obviously the jobs and all that, whereas the Republicans say, well, a lot of this is the fraud that's been building up for years.
Yeah, and it's just a question of how fast can you go and how much is too much. And it seems like we're trying to, or the country's trying to figure it out. And of course, the Trump administration is too. Susan, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later. Next on Full Circle Florida, a CEO's perspective on President Trump's tariffs, the good, the bad, and the balanced. Welcome back to Full Circle Florida. If you're finding it hard to keep up with where we are on this trade war, that's because perhaps the president himself does not know how far and how long he wants to take this. Who has the leverage in this real-time pain sponge will not just be a test of wills, but a test of economic strength, paid for by you, of course. Here's my conversation this week with the CEO of All Metals Fabricating, Lance Thrillkill. Lance, thank you for stopping by. Appreciate it. It's important to get the perspective of a businessman who's actively running a business in this current climate. You know, it does seem like every president takes on a conflict, whether it's a war or an economy that's struggling. But given the inflation that everyday Americans are struggling with, you got to wonder if Americans have the stomach for a trade war, especially if it's long and drawn out. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak for all the public, but you know, we've been down this path before. You know, he's essentially doing the same thing, a little bit more overarching in terms of, at least as it relates to metals. You know, and I expect many exemptions to come for countries in the near future. Right now, it's across the board, 25% tariff on all aluminum and steel that's imported. So that's a little bit unique, but he essentially did the same thing in his previous administration. So, you know, I think we survived it then, and we can do it again.
Are there any winners in a trade war, or do consumers just end up paying the price? And where do you think consumers are going to feel the impact? I mean, is it everywhere eventually, depending on how long this lasts? And I know in your line of work, I would imagine, you know, it has to do with a trickle-down effect when it comes to materials that go right down to the customer level.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the commodity, you know, and how applicable and necessary it is to have tariffs on certain commodities. For example, you know, I think it was a great thing that we became energy independent in his previous running administration by, you know, utilizing our resources here and putting tariffs on companies that we're importing it from. As it relates to metals, you know, U.S. manufacturers are completely dependent on imported metals. And so while, yes, I think it's important to put tariffs on China because nobody can compete with, you know, slave labor and subsidized materials by their government. So it is important to put that tariff to level the playing field. But, you know, with Eastern Europe, where a lot of the metal steel comes from, I don't necessarily see the benefit of putting a tariff on them. It'd be one thing if we could sustain our own, you know, demand, but the mills in America can't even, you know, produce a fraction of the need for U.S. manufacturers, and we're completely dependent on outside countries. And there's not an easy pathway. It would take a decade or decades to be able to become self-sufficient, and it would create a lot of jobs, quite frankly, that, you know, I'm not sure a lot of people want. And so, you know, how does it affect the American people? Ultimately, from a, you know, macroeconomic standpoint, I can't help but think it does cause inflation. I think that some of the inflation we saw, there were so many factors going into the inflation that we experienced previously, a lot around COVID and how much money was printed. But I certainly think that the tariffs played a little bit of a role in that as well.
Do you see a path where, in the end, maybe it's 6 months, maybe it's 9 months, that America's position is stronger and that some of these seeds that the Trump administration is planting start to bear fruit, even if it is a bumpy ride?
Yes, sir. Yeah, I think that there will quickly get to exemptions. I mean, you saw it very quickly on the initial 25% tariff to Canada and Mexico, was able to renegotiate that down. And so I'm confident that that will happen with other countries. I think it's just a overarching, kind of overreaching. Part of the problem when you have going back and forth in between parties is they always overcorrect for the previous one. And so, what I would say is you got to take the good with the bad in every situation. And, overall, while the tariffs in the first run of Trump's administration were not a blessing to us and our business, we also had our 4 best years ever. And so, and with, the tax cuts to small business owners and really helped revitalize the economy and stimulate growth. Because when we have tax cuts, we reinvest an average of $800,000 a year in new equipment, which, just continues to fuel the economy. So I would tell Americans just hang in there and take the good with the bad. And I think ultimately the economy is going to do really well.
Lance Thurlkill, thank you for your insight. Appreciate it. Still to come on Full Circle Florida, the top secret deal to buy the Rays and put them in Tampa. Is it rumor or is it real? JP Peterson stops by next. Welcome back to Full Circle Florida. If you want to know what's going on behind closed doors with the Tampa Bay Rays and their future, have a talk with longtime Tampa Bay sports journalist JP Peterson. This week, I did.
Our commitment is here for St. Petersburg and Tampa Bay and the entire region.
You've been out in front of this really fascinating reporting about this mystery group of investors who are looking to buy the Rays. What can you tell us about that right now?
Well, for the first time, there's been a perfect storm of things coming together. There are 2 groups now, I'm told, to my sources very close to the negotiations, that there are 2 groups vying for this team. And they are what I would call elite businessmen. Can I give their names because that might screw up the deal and They want to remain anonymous until they can either get this deal done or it fizzles out. But yes, they have the money to buy the team. They have the wherewithal to build a stadium. And for the first time, Major League Baseball is fully invested in new ownership coming in here, replacing Stu Sternberg because clearly he has not been able to get the job done on the Hillsborough side or the St. Pete side. The St. Pete deal was, at least in my mind, a humongous boondoggle in the favor of the Rays. I mean, they got everything they could possibly want, and it still wasn't enough. So I think Major League Baseball has come to the realization that Stu can't get it done. These new ownership groups have money. They're rooted here locally. They're elite folks that everyone will know when these names come out. And I feel like now is the time that this can happen. And they both of these groups want to build on the Tampa side, where Major League Baseball has also always said the stadium needs to be. Nothing against St. Petersburg, a beautiful, wonderful place that doesn't need a baseball stadium, by the way, at all. Has wonderful beaches and incredible downtown. It's just not the place for a baseball stadium, in my opinion, and Major League Baseball's opinion.
Where are these talks right now? Are we in the very early stages? Could this be a long, drawn-out process, or are they working up against the clock because you get the March 31st deadline?
No, I don't think they're working up against the clock at all. I don't think that deadline. If the Rays were going to do something, they would have done it by now, right? I think that's just going to come and go. How these negotiations get to the finish line, Stu Sternberg is a hard person to deal with. We've seen that through 3 mayors on St. Pete's side. The Ybor City plan, where he took his money and went away, or not his money, but took his ball and went away at the end of that deal. Same thing he did in St. Pete, same game plan. Promise everything, do the press conference, get people excited, and then get to the end and say, no, I'm not interested in the deal. So my feeling is it's going to be hard to do a deal with Stu because I'm told he wants up to $2 billion.
I was going to say,
it's worth about 1.25 according to Forbes. I think somewhere in the middle there is where they'll meet on a price. How quickly it gets done, I don't know.
There's actually a disincentive for a team to move to an expansion market. Because they want to expand with new teams. They don't want existing teams to move to those markets. I think it was the A's, they actually levied a tax. I guess if he or whoever sells that team in Vegas, there's like an obscene amount of tax that they would have to pay. So they're locked in.
They've got these, they've got Portland, who just produced some incredible renderings of a waterfront stadium that they want. These Major League Baseball owners want to get that expansion fee. They don't want to allow Stu Sternberg to take one of these expansion markets. So the team's not going anywhere.
In this economy, no one's just throwing around $2 billion saying, come on in, we'll build the whole thing. I mean, that's a tough gig to have. But where do you think this goes next? How do you see this playing out? And I guess the key question is how long? I mean, growing up
Yeah,
here, you and
I
I have
wish-
been around a long time. I mean, time has kind of been our best friend and our worst enemy. It's been a long ride.
Well, the constant in all this stadium problem has been Stu Sternberg.
Yeah.
You know, he's been the problem, in my opinion. So how long it takes, you know, he's got to agree to the sale. Major League Baseball, I think, is heavily encouraging him to sell. But that deal still has to be done. So that's the hard part. And then, but I do think both of these groups have a very good plan to build at the Ybor City location. I know West Shore has been mentioned. I think the Fairgrounds is still in play. So I don't think they're set on any one location, but I think both groups are set on building in Tampa.
And I don't want to come off as this is slanted or biased against Stu Sternberg. I mean, people would argue, hey, look, given what he's had to work with, they've put a good product on the field
yes.
year after year.
Oh, yeah.
You could be at another place where they just said, well, if the city doesn't care about it or whoever, we're not going to get what we want, then field a bunch of minor leaguers and let's just lose every year. I mean, we saw that with the Bucks early on.
Yeah.
In the 70s, there are teams out there that have figured out you don't have to win in order to make money.
He's done a great job putting a winner on the field. I would argue he would have done a better job had he spent more money on players, which they could do. The idea that they don't have any money or haven't made any money, to me, is ridiculous. They've made plenty of money because their payrolls have always been low. So they could have spent more money. They chose not to. And that's another good thing about new ownership. These guys have deep pockets and will spend money on players. So as the Rays develop players, instead of selling them off where they get too expensive, these guys would try to re-sign those players and keep them here. Wouldn't that be fun? And we're going to see baseball in Tampa outside at Steinbrenner. I think it's going to be incredible.
Nice, huh?
All the tickets are sold out. You know, it's going to be an incredible experience. I think they're going to have a good team this year.
Yeah.
The pitching is amazing. If the offense comes along, it could be a really special season.
Well,
in Tampa.
you get to sample the product
Yes.
outdoors the way you never have before as a baseball fan in the regular season when it actually counts.
It's going to be incredible.
It is, and it's something that Tampa's never seen before. And, you know, again, Sternberg has a chance to be the hero in this whole thing. I mean, at the end of the day, if baseball stays in Tampa and it's in Tampa, you know, that's what we always wanted.
I don't think he's going to be the owner.
Yeah, no,
I don't
maybe
think he'll
not.
be the
Right.
owner. I don't think
That's how it has
I
to
don't-
work out, right?
Yeah, I think Major League Baseball has realized this. And by the way, Ken Rosenthal from The Athletic has confirmed all the reporting that we have done as well. So it's not just us reporting this, and he's as plugged in as anybody. Major League Baseball is highly invested in getting this new group to own the team and build in Tampa so they can go expand in other markets. And I think that's how it's going to end.
They just became the hottest ticket in town.
Oh my
I mean,
God! You can't get a ticket now.
You shrink the size of everything, and
Which,
now
by
it's
the
in
way,
demand.
they're not losing money playing at
No, they're
Steinbrenner
not.
Field when you double and triple the ticket price. So they'll be fine. They'll be
JP
fine.
Peterson, thanks for stopping
Well, thanks
by.
so much. Really
Appreciate
enjoyed it.
Thank you. Our final thoughts when we come back. All right, welcome back. Our final thoughts on the week that was and the week ahead. I did notice President Trump calls this cabinet meeting with Elon Musk present and said, you're in charge of your own department. Elon Musk is not the ultimate decider. What do you make of that?
A lot of pushback from the newly in place cabinet members who are saying, look, I can't do what you say if I don't have control over the people that work here. So it was the new cabinet members in unison sort of flexing their muscle against Musk.
We'll see how that plays out. What are you looking forward to in the next coming weeks?
I'm really, really watching what goes on at that meeting in Saudi Arabia over the whole Ukraine situation.
Yeah, and that the progress is I don't even know how you measure it at this point. I mean, hopefully a deal is in the works, but you don't know until you know.
You don't, but these polls are showing that a lot of people still are in favor of helping Ukraine, but others less so. It's kind of a split. It's becoming even somewhat of a split as to how much we help Ukraine among Republicans in Congress.
All right. Dr. MacManus, as always, thank you for stopping by, and thank you for watching us here on Full Circle Florida. We hope you'll join us again next week, and make sure to add our free 24/7 streaming news channel, ABC Action News Plus. Have a great week, everyone.